It is Wednesday on Daily Delivery. I am Michael Rand, happy to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a great day out there today. It is about to get bonkers in Twin Cities sports. Wild clinched a playoff spot last night. We'll get to that in just a minute here. Combine that with Wolves in the playoffs right around the same time. Wolves start Saturday. NHL playoffs start Saturday. Don't know exactly the Wild schedule yet, but they're going to be playing sometime around there. They're going to be on the same track. Road, then home. We got the Wolves schedule, too, for the first 4 games, at least. Actually, all of them. But we have game times for the first 4. Dates for all 7 against the Lakers now, which I'll get to in a minute here as well. But next week is going to be crazy because you got the NFL draft as well. We'll get into all that here in just a little bit. Velle E. Neal III joins me as well, talking Twins, talking Timberwolves, talking Niko Medved and the Gophers. Lots of stuff in play with Velle today in the Daily Delivery debate. Some NBA stuff just in general towards the end of the show. There were some games last night that had some interesting twists and turns. First, though, what I miss. Yeah, we got to start with the Wild. They took it down to the wire in this game. And for a while, against a bad team, against Anaheim last night, it didn't look like they were going to have to necessarily win in order to clinch their playoff spot, right? Because they were down in their game, but it was looking like, hey, even if they lose, they're still going to get in. They probably would have played Winnipeg in that scenario, but Calgary was losing 3-1 to Vegas. It was like late second period when the Wild were down late to the Ducks. So you're looking at it and you're saying, okay, this is not how they want to do it. This would not be the more favorable matchup because if they win or at least get a point in this game, they're going to play Vegas instead of Winnipeg. Both really tough teams, both division winners, but Vegas maybe not quite as bad of a matchup and not quite as good this year as Winnipeg has been. So you look at it and you're like, okay, even if they can't get it done here, which would have been kind of embarrassing against a team that's out of the playoff chase, just wants the season to end, and the Wild have everything to play for and they're at home. But you look at it and you say, okay, even if they lose this game, they're still probably going to get in. Well, 2 things happen. Let's talk about the thing that happened later first. Calgary ends up rallying and beating Vegas in overtime 5-4. St. Louis won in a rout over the Utah Hockey Club. So if the Wild didn't get to overtime, didn't get the 1 point they needed to clinch that first wild card berth, they would have been taking this down to the wire. They would have been basically needing Calgary on Thursday to lose. Otherwise, if Calgary would have won on Thursday in those scenarios, they would have been out of the playoffs entirely. Because at that point, right, it was looking like they could just back in if they needed to. That did not end up being the case. So that makes what happened in the final minute of regulation all that more dramatic in retrospect. Joel Eriksson Ek scores with 22 seconds left to force overtime to give them the 1 point they needed to get into the playoffs. They're the first wild card because they have the tiebreaker. They knew that at that point. They'd had the tiebreaker over both St. Louis, and at that point, Calgary didn't matter because they were kind of past that. But they knew at least that they had the tiebreaker. They ended up winning. They brought Fleury in to play the overtime. He gets another win to kind of cap his career. They win 3-2. The extra goal in overtime didn't matter at that point. Boldy scored. It didn't matter. It was nice to get a win, I suppose, but at the very least, all they really needed was the 1 point, but they secured that in the last possible moment, and if they hadn't, they would have been staring today at the very real possibility of, hey, if Calgary wins tomorrow, we are flat out of the playoffs after going into Tuesday with a 96% chance of making the postseason. So a lot of things were kind of slipping away, getting dicey for them on Tuesday night before Eriksson Ek put that one in. But now they're in. Now they know they're playing Vegas. As Patrick Royce put on Blue Sky, I'm sure a lot of local NHL scribes are very sad that instead of going to Winnipeg, which would have been the case had the Wild lost, but Calgary also lost. I'm sure they're very sad that they're going to Vegas instead of Winnipeg, but they are going to Vegas, a team again that has handled the Wild pretty easily this season. This is not a great matchup for Minnesota. Nothing was going to be, but Vegas this year against the Wild. Golden Knights 3-0 against the Wild this season. Wild lost 3-2 on December 15th, lost 4-1 on January 12th, and lost 5-1 on March 25th. 2 of those were home games. So not feeling great about that. I guess if you can look at anything and take a slight positive about it, that 3-2 loss in December is probably a more representative game of what the Wild have right now, because at that, by the time you got later in the season in particular, until just a few games ago, no Ek, no Kaprizov. They're kind of struggling, just gasping to the finish line. That game in December was when the Wild were playing much better. That game was tied 2-2 after 2 periods. Kaprizov had both of the Wild goals in that game. Vegas gets the winner in the third, but a competitive game, a back-and-forth game. So you can take something out of that and say, you know what, maybe that's more representative of what the Wild were going to be this season. Jesper Wallstedt played in net for the Wild in that game, by the way, so that was kind of an interesting moment in the season as well. So no Gustafsson, no Fleury in that game, so maybe that factors into things as well. But maybe that's a more representative sample for the Wild to think about in terms of kind of where they're at with Vegas. By the time they played them in January, things were looking a little bit different. The Wild didn't feel great about that game, I don't think. They lost 4-1. Again, Vegas got 2 late goals. It was fairly competitive. It just wasn't, again, not a terribly competitive overall series between the Wild and Vegas this season when Vegas won 3-0, outscored them 12-4 combined. But again, no Kaprizov in that game. Ek was playing, but no Kaprizov in that game. So again, listen, they're in. They should be closer to full strength than they've been for a while. Can they give Vegas a series is a good question. They've done it before. They've taken Vegas to good series in the past. Vegas, though, does have that cup-winning pedigree. The thing you keep coming back to is that in the NHL, unlike the NBA, unlike some of these other, unlike the NBA in particular, which will be running concurrently, it's a race to 3 or 4. Sometimes even fewer than that, but basically it's a race to 3 or 4 goals. That means there is a greater margin for upsets, weird bounces, hot goalies, things like that can tip a series, can tip a game. So I do give the Wild a chance in this series, especially now that they are getting healthier. But overall, you got to say, look, they were fortunate to get in. They were fortunate to gasp their way to the finish, but they're in, and now we will see what they can do. Like I said, we still don't know the full NHL schedule. We don't even know when the Wild Game 1 is yet, because there's still some regular season games left, still a couple things to sort out playoff-wise. But the NHL playoffs overall start on Saturday. Question, will we see Zeev Buium in those games? Didn't play yesterday, much to the chagrin of some fans. The rookie out of Denver who came in could give the Wild a jolt of offense on the blue line. We'll see when they play, if he plays. But like I did say, we are going to have a lot of stuff going on at the same time whenever that Wild series starts. We already knew the Wolves series started Saturday. Now we know all the games, all the dates, and some game times for the rest of it. They start Saturday against the Lakers in LA, 7:30 Central Time. That's not a bad start time. Tuesday, so 2 off days in Los Angeles. Tuesday, 9 p.m. local start time in Minnesota. That's not great. Friday, so another 2 off days. They travel from LA to Minnesota for Game 3. Friday is the first home game for the Wolves. That is an 8:30 Minneapolis start. Again, not perfect, but that's decent, at least compared to some of what you could have. And then Sunday, not this Sunday, Sunday the 27th against the Lakers, 2:30 p.m. They get an afternoon game on Sunday the 27th, and the next games are Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday, if necessary, after that. So another 2 days when they travel back and forth for between games 4 and 5, again, if necessary. So a lot of stuff going to be happening at once. Next Friday, that first Wolves home game, Game 3. Next Thursday, Round 1 of the NFL Draft. Next Friday, Rounds 2 and 3 of the NFL Draft. Got to imagine the first Wild game is going to be somewhere in there as well. First Wild home game, Game 3 is going to be somewhere in there against Vegas. Somewhere in there over the weekend, probably Wild Vegas as well. It is going to get really interesting around here. A lot of stuff coming up. Planning to do bonus podcasts after all of the Wolves playoff games. So right after the games end, we're going to try that with the Wolves this year. There'll be plenty of Wild content on the regular Daily Delivery podcast. I'm sure there'll be some more Wolves on those podcasts as well. So listen up for that. First one of those will be Saturday night. We'll go live right after the game. It should be live on Twitter. X should go up quickly after that on podcast platforms and on YouTube. So look for that off of all the Wolves-Lakers games, and look for a lot of viewing for you in the next however long this playoff run for each team lasts. Second week in a row, Lavelle in studio for our daily delivery debate. Lavelle, how are you doing?
I'm doing swell, man. Looking forward to playoff basketball, playoff hockey, and hopefully warmer baseball.
Yeah.
Maybe more success.
Maybe not
in baseball.
Maybe not playoff baseball, but a long season. That's a subject of ours. We're not talking Wild today because we're recording Wednesday. We're recording Tuesday. So much to be determined Tuesday night, which I'm sure I'm talking about already on the show, but not with Lavelle. Our three subjects today, Lavelle will cover Timberwolves, Twins, and Niko Medved and the Gophers. First up, the Wolves. They are in the playoffs. It was a narrow... The Western Conference standings basically wound up with 6 teams separated by 2 games. The Wolves kind of wound up right in the middle where they don't have to do the play-in, but they are the 6th seed playing the Lakers. That means LeBron. That means Luka. That means all sorts of national narratives. Lavelle, the debate question is simple. Who is going to win this series, which begins Saturday in Los Angeles?
Well, if you ask some of the national media types, they already got the Lakers moving on to the second round.
Lakers in 3 to them.
A couple of them, yeah. The Lakers in 5. I was like, my goodness. So, I tell you, if it does go 7, I'll take the Lakers at home in the winner-take-all situation. Yeah. But I'm not quite ready to go there and say that the Wolves season is going to be over in a week or a week and a half or so. I think the 17-4 run they made toward the end of the regular season was encouraging. I think they found themselves during that stretch. I think they found each other and learned how to play more with each other. Rudy Gobert being more active offensively down the stretch, I think, is something that can serve them well, particularly in this first round where the lack of height with the Lakers is going to be noticeable. And Rudy just being Rudy, running toward the basket, tip dunking, offensive rebounds, putbacks, alley-oops. He can get to 20 points that way and not have to worry about having any plays ran for him. So I think that's something that we need to look forward to. 2, who's going to guard Ant? Who on the Lakers? Now, I guess during the regular season, Ant only averaged 19 points a game against the Lakers, which I was raised an eyebrow when I saw that, because I look at the Lakers roster, I don't see a defensive stopper there, so I don't know if that was Ant stopped himself or if one of those games he was banged up or whatever. I like to think you're going to see the real Anthony Edwards in this series too, matched up against LeBron, the guy he bonded with during the Olympics. I just think that he wants to show the old man that he's in that group of guys that wants to be next in line. Plus, I'm fascinated to see, like I said, the bigger lineup that the Wolves can have versus the smaller lineup. Who's going to use that to their advantage more than the other? Can the Lakers take advantage with a smaller, quicker lineup against those sets, and will the Wolves be able to just pound away on them? Are we going to see what we saw during the Dallas series last year? Dallas switching until Rudy's on Luka. We saw how that turned out, and Luka's going to remember this, buddy, hitting the jumper in his face. How's that going to come into play? I think the Wolves have got some tools in their toolbox that will be great to deal with LA in this series. I'm not ready to say that it's a lot that the Lakers are going to win. I think if the Wolves win, they're going to do it in 6.
Think you are in the right zone. You're right, too. Ant, 4 games against the Lakers this season, 19 points a game. I believe that is among the fewest he's scored against anybody this season on average. Miami was a little bit lower, but the teams that he faced a lot, that is
a low number for him, but yeah, probably just a product of, whatever it was. I'm not too worried about Ant. He is a bright lights player. I am worried a bit about Lavelle. The national narrative comes at this because I think people kind of have this muscle memory of what happens when LeBron gets onto this stage. I think there's going to be a temptation where people are going to want to see the Lakers advance, and I think that's I'm not saying it's going to be 8-on-5 like the officiating is going to be against the Wolves, but I do think they're going to have to contend with some of this. This is a little bit of like a Twins-Yankees kind of thing. Not big market, small market, because this is all fair payroll-wise in the NBA, but when you start to talk about kind of the glory teams versus the flyover teams, I do worry about that. I think the Wolves do make this a competitive series, but I think ultimately the Lakers win this series just because LeBron is still one of the best players in the game. I don't think Ant is at the level yet of a LeBron, certainly, nor a Luka. The Lakers have the two best players in this series, and that's no slander to Ant, but they still have the two best players in this series. That is a lot to overcome in the playoffs.
I will agree with you that the Lakers have the two best players. After that, but the Wolves may have the next four.
True.
You could argue with Ant, with Julius Randle, Rudy. I don't know quite. Rudy could get in there. But who's your next favorite Laker player?
Austin Reeves, probably.
That'd be Austin Reeves.
Yeah.
Where would Reeves fit in this Wolves rotation? Would you take Dante over Reeves?
They're comparable players. I mean, Reeves is younger. I think he maybe has to do a little bit more for the Lakers. But it's a good point. This is a question of the Wolves' depth versus the Lakers' star power.
Yeah, I agree. Can a two-man team? How far can a two-man team run in the NBA postseason? And how durable can LeBron stay through a series? Now,
and Luka.
And Luka. It looks like Luka's lost weight since the trade. So I feel bad for Dallas fans because of that deal. But I bet you the Dallas Mavericks brass, they were just sick of his crap with him being 270 pounds and drinking beers all the time and not listening to anybody. Did they make a good trade? Absolutely not.
No.
And they're going to pay the price for that. But I just think that the Wolves, and the other thing too, I think there's only one other team in the playoffs that are in the top 8 in offense and defense, like the Wolves are, I think. That's something to be said going in here, and that is what's going to have to get the Wolves over the hump in this series. Their ability to defend. Go at Luka. Make him work on defense. Hopefully that drips into his offense and affects how effective he is that way. Keep LeBron from going left. Just little things like that, which they can do. And they've had a lot of practice playing in the Western Conference this year, having to deal with fantastic players. I just think that they've got what it takes to win this series.
I think they'll be competitive. I just worry about crunch time, LeBron, Luka. The Wolves just haven't been great in those got to have a bucket, got to have a stop situations this year. 2 or 3 of those games are going to come down to that, and I don't love their chances in those moments, just like they didn't love their chances in those moments against Luka in the Western Conference Finals last year, and he didn't have LeBron as a running mate in those games.
I'll concede that. I think that's a very good point because we watched the Wolves have some crazy possessions in fourth quarters. Even during the 17-4 run to finish the regular season, they've had some weird sequences late in games where they didn't quite play assertive enough or with enough force or with too much force.
Yes. As Patrick Royce would say, a lot of those moments. Let's go on to subject 2, the Twins. Is this, I think I might have asked somebody else this question, but it wasn't you. Is this a bad team or is this a team off to a bad start?
Most of this team, I would say about 80% of the roster, maybe 85 were around last year when they looked to be comfortably in the playoff picture. 92% probability of making the postseason.
They were 70-53 at one point.
Yeah, there were 17 games over 500. A lot of that roster is still here. Carlos Santana's not here anymore. But And people thought that the bullpen was going to be better this year than a year ago. People thought that the rotation is going to be a little bit better because the young guys got some experience and everybody's healthy. So it's hard for me to call the Twins a bad team. It looks awful right now. It's not just bad, it's awful. I mean, they're scoring as many runs as they're committing errors in games, and you're not going to win.
No, that's not good.
When that happens. I don't know what's happened to the pitching defense, but I was there. I watched them take PFP drills during spring training. It wasn't like they did not have these drills. They had the same type of drills they've had every year. How can you explain what's going on from that standpoint? They got rid of the hitting coaching staff. They got a brand new hitting coaching staff, and they worked harder on situational hitting and trying to spray the ball to all fields and take better at bats. I feel like the Twins have had some sort of offensive emergency at the beginning of like most of these seasons on the Rocco, 5 of the last 7. I think one reason Luis Ariz became a Luis Ariz because the Twins weren't hitting in April, and Rocco decided to put him in the lineup and leave him there, and we saw what happened. So, but this looks particularly bad. When you have a starting pitching rotation in which over the last 7 games they put up a 0.96 ERA as starters, and you only have gone 2-5 during that stretch.
That's wild.
That is crazy. So you're wasting a great pitcher staff. I don't think the pitchers and the hitters are going to start pointing fingers at each other, but that's the type of stuff a manager may have to nip in the bud here going forward.
Joe Ryan quote the other day after his start did catch my eye. Did that catch your eye? It would be nice to have a little bit more time between innings. Like I turned around, I got my water bottle, and I was running back out there real quick. Like a minute or two would be nice.
Yeah, that was an indictment on the offense. And if you're a Twins hitter, you have to shrug your shoulders and go, well, he's right.
He's not wrong.
Yeah, we're really getting these quick innings, these quick 1, 2, 3 innings. I was watching the game with some friends yesterday. I think I took one sip out of my beverage and the inning was over. And I was like, what the heck?
It's fast.
So I think that was the 3rd inning, too.
You get a pitch clock and you get like an 8-pitch inning, you can be done in 2 minutes. It is bonkers.
Yeah, it is. It is. The Mets starter was pretty effective.
Yes.
I thought he got wild the 3rd time through the order a little bit, but man, the Twins are going to start hitting some good pitching. I don't know what's going on with Carlos Correa either.
He's the big question.
I may have to write a column scathing. I may have to rip him. His Twins career does not look like his Astros career, and it needs to. It needs to soon, immediately to get this team off the schneid, because we have 2 guys batting in the top 3, 4, or 5 spots, and they're hitting the way that Buxton and Correa are. That's trouble, folks. You need your best players to at least be adequate when they're in a slump. They're not even they're horrible when they're in their slumps. Right, and Carlos Correa began yesterday's game with a minus .2 WAR, which is hard for a shortstop to be to have that. That's just, it's unacceptable.
No,
they got to start hitting. And I don't know, you can't keep blaming the coaches or blaming Rocco's manager.
No,
lineup construction. You could blame the family and the front office for what they've given Rocco to work with. But a lot of these guys were here last year, and they were 10th in baseball on offense. Remember that?
Yes.
This offense was 10th in the league in runs scored last year. They have it in them. They just got to bring it back out.
I think they're a bad team, and I think they're a bad team. I think whatever happened at the end of last year, they can't. They're having a hard time shaking that. They're not going to go 60 and 102 this season, but for them to win 73 to 75 games this year would not surprise me. I don't think this is a good team. And here's a question for you. Who on this team, who on the 2025 Twins, would hit higher than 6th for the 2019 Twins?
2019. Who was the leadoff?
That was the Bomba squad.
Yeah, I know. But I'm sorry. Who was the leadoff hitter for the Bomba squad?
They kind of rotated. I mean, I don't know if they had a set batting order that year. That was the year Arias debuted, right? Because they brought him in.
I joked with Joe Mara. I said, if you decided to play one more year, you would have been batting at the top of the order for the Bomba squad.
Yes, you would have.
You would have scored 100 runs.
You would have.
In that. Let's see. Buxton maybe as a leadoff guy? Maybe. This year's Correa in the first half of last year's Correa, half of last year's Correa would bat in the top 6 of the Bomba squad. The September and April Correa wouldn't bat 6. He wouldn't bat in the third spot for the 2024 White Sox.
No. No.
So, yeah, you're making a good case here. Ty France is the offensive player of the week in the American League.
Good for him, but he would not have been higher than 6. That team was stacked, but they had Mitch Garver. This is top to bottom on Baseball Reference. Mitch Garver, C.J. Cron, Jonathan Schoop, who kind of got supplanted later in the year by Arias, Polanco, Sano, Rosario, Buxton, Kepler, Nelson, Cruz, Marwin Gonzalez, Arias. Like, they were stacked. Obviously, they were stacked. This is a different kind of team than that team, but nobody would hit higher than 6th in that lineup, maybe not even higher than 7th. They do not have a lot of good hitters on this team.
Right now, they don't.
No, not right now.
Got to pull his head out of his ass and get going.
Yeah, Correa should.
Buxton a little bit too.
Correa and Buxton should be, but they are not right now. So
here's the thing: I don't want to get too far ahead, but if this continues on, then you gut the roster at the trade deadline, and you get whatever you can for you, and you start from scratch because this mix isn't working. You already sent down Miranda,
right?
And you thought Miranda was going to be the guy to step up and be part of the offense this year, and he's not.
He was your pick to click.
I know he was.
Oh man, maybe in St. Paul.
I didn't know his head was going to click on second base and tell him to walk off and get tagged out. I didn't know that was coming.
I don't think we're too far away from a daily delivery debate on Rocco's future either. Although I don't know what that means exactly, but we're not too far away from conversations about a larger shakeup at this point, because this is not just a bad start to this season. This was 12-27 at the end of last year as well. Lavelle, last thing, Niko Medved. I've been impressed with what they've done in the portal so far. Marcus Fuller and I talked about that a lot on Tuesday's show. Has Niko Medved done anything yet that Ben Johnson couldn't have done with the resources that they're being given this season?
With the resources, I would like to see what Ben would have with the resources. I think he would have had a different caliber of player. He may have been able to keep Farrell Payne from Texas A&M or Texas Tech.
A&M. He went to A&M. Now he's in Maryland.
Hawkins went to
Maryland now.
Yeah. Hawkins went to Tech.
Correct.
Right? He went to Lubbock.
Yes.
Yeah. Farrell Payne, who reportedly went to Texas A&M for $650, I believe.
He's probably getting more than that from Maryland now after he had a big year this year.
The rumor is it's well into I'm not saying 8 figures, but it's safely over $1 million.
Yeah.
That he's getting to go to Maryland. So, he probably would have been able to retain a couple people. Farrell Payne stays, and you don't have to get this Frank Mitchell guy who shot 40% from the free throw line.
That's terrible.
I wrote about this Sunday. I was just out of my mind when I started looking at the free throw numbers.
40%.
They had the worst guy they're bringing in, the kid from San Diego State. He shot 64% from the foul line last year. He would have been better than 6 golfers.
That's amazing.
Who played at least 22 games last year. You had guards shooting under 60% from the free throw. I already applauded Niko for at least addressing that issue. They need rebounding. They need size in the Big Ten. That was painfully obvious this past season with the Gophers. But with these type of resources, I don't know if Ben would have brought in the same exact amount of players. He may have been able to keep. He may have been able to keep Hawkins and Farrell Payne if he had some resources. And
true. I'm talking about right now, though. Like, would he have? I feel like the thing that I've been impressed with Medved is that he seems to be bringing in. He seems to have a plan. They've got a lot of big guards right now. I think he knows how he wants to play more than Ben Johnson ever knew how he wanted to play, and I think he's constructing a roster around that. I feel like this is a much more targeted foray into the portal than we saw under Ben Johnson. Now, the fair question, though, is that because he has more resources, or is he just better at knowing what he wants?
I think Ben got what he could get and tried to make it work as much as possible. He didn't fill in holes. He had to jam some round holes in the square, get some round pegs in the square holes.
He was slapping tape on things. He wasn't filling holes.
Yeah, Niko's got the flexibility to be, like you said, more targeted. And I like it. He reminds me a little bit of Brad Underwood at Illinois, because Brad loves his 6'5" through 6'8" guys who can step out in the wing a little bit and defend the perimeter, because the Omot kid definitely can defend on the perimeter and sink a three-pointer occasionally. And we're seeing a few more of these pop up on the roster. I still need to see some bigs. He needs at least 2 big boys, 2 6'10" guys and above who can rebound and not just like be projects, but they gotta come in and be able to contribute right away.
Yeah, I think so. That's what we still need to see. And Marcus and I talked about that earlier this week. Like that's the next phase of this, and I'm sure they're going after that. I do like, though, the size that they're getting on the perimeter. I think that, Marcus said you look at a lot of these guys, you watch their highlights, Big Ten ready bodies, at least. They are going to look the part, and now Niko Medved's opportunity is to get them coached up to the point where they are Big Ten caliber players. I've got expectations for next year. I think this team should be competitive, and I'm not saying like Big Ten champions competitive, but I think they should be middle of the pack, at least in the Big Ten, or have the chance to do that. Be able to compete. Be able to be in the mix in the last 4 games of the season for an NCAA tournament berth.
I think that's very possible, and we have to remember too. Ben was a couple bad losses away from actually being in the middle of the pack. They gave Wisconsin everything they could at the barn late in the season, but that doggone Wichita State loss, that Ohio State loss, those were bad losses. Oh no, and then coming home after the West Coast swing and losing to Northwestern,
and Penn State.
That. I thought I talked Quell into keeping Ben until that happened.
Also, though, that West Coast swing, though, was a little bit of a false flag because they led for like 4 minutes combined in those games.
They still won the games, though.
They did win the games, I know, but
And one of those teams, Cameron, UCLA isn't as good as... One was much better than the other one.
Yes.
One was more of a feather in the cap than the other.
UCLA was actually a good team, but they...
Yeah, it was USC.
USC was not a good team, but in any event... It's a question with an impossible answer. We don't know what Ben Johnson would do. I've been pretty impressed so far just looking at the players they're getting. It makes more sense to me than the way the rosters were put together the last couple of years.
I think Niko's going to enter next year with a better roster than last year's by
for
far.
sure.
And if that's the case, then they should be middle of the pack in the Big Ten with the way he coaches. And I don't include Drake in my Niko turnaround programs argument.
He's only there for 1 year.
He turned around for a minute, and he turned around Colorado
That's
State.
fair.
And the number of 20-win season he reeled off with the Rams shows you his coaching chops. Some people, Marcus Fuller wants to also pull Drake into that conversation because Drake was absolutely horrible. And I guess they went 17-17, which was like
they were 500. Yeah, they were 500.
It was like a 10-game improvement from the year before.
But
okay.
If he would stay there one more year, we could give him credit for that. You give him partial credit.
That's my argument.
Yeah, partial credit.
But the chances of a first-year bump are real with Niko.
Yes.
Now, how big of a bump that's going to be, we'll have to just wait and see.
And we don't, obviously that's not what they ultimately aspire to be. They don't ultimately aspire to be middle of the pack. But I feel like they are in the process of a competitive rebuild, that they can do a competitive rebuild.
God, that phrase.
I know. I'm never going to let it go. I'm never going to let it go, Lavelle. Well, we'll see. Wolves, Lakers, Saturday.
You need a
Wild.
podcast at your best when your best is required.
Oh my gosh. We'll do it again next week. Thanks, Lavelle.
All right, later.
Great stuff from Lavelle, and I will say Tuesday's game, Twins game, was more indicative of what he was saying. Not ready to say this is a bad team yet. Let's finish with the cooler and talk about that a little bit. One of the better games for the Twins this year. Wasn't perfect, still made some mistakes, a base running blunder, a fielding error, things like that, but not every game's going to be perfect. They persevered. They won 6-3 against the Mets. The formula was pretty good. Bailey Ober, more than 6 innings, pretty strong, 3 runs allowed. Cole Sands did a good job of putting out the fire in the 7th inning. Good inning from Griffin Jackson. Then Joan Duran pitching around some defensive miscues, gets the job done, 6-3. They added on runs. They kept tacking on runs. And the one run in particular that I want to focus on here really quick is the run that Byron Buxton basically generated by himself. Gets a single, steals second base easily, goes to third on a ground out, and then a contact play is on to Hopper to the second baseman for the Mets. Looks like any other runner, 99% of MLB players would have been out by 10 feet at the plate. Buxton gets a great jump, makes a great head-first slide, gets in just ahead of the tag, scores a big run for the Twins to give them an extra one in there. You never know when you're going to need those, but larger point is this. Buxton is flying around faster than I have seen him fly around in quite some time. Not a lot has gone right for the Twins so far this season. Even with that win, they are 6-12. This is not the start they want. I think the jury is still out on whether this is a bad team or just a good team off to a bad start, or at least a decent team off to a bad start. Time will tell on that. What we've seen so far from Buxton, though, is a lot of fun. Yeah, they lost Correa and they lost Wallner to injuries in this game. We'll see if MRIs reveal much on those fronts today. That could be potentially damaging long-term. So a lot of things still cloudy for the Twins. One thing that has been fun this year is watching Byron Buxton run. Hasn't hit the way he wanted to. Not much has gone right on the field, but man, watching Byron Buxton play the way Byron Buxton played when he first came up 10 years ago. That has been a fun thing to watch. So if we can take away anything out of this so far, it is that. And I'm hoping to make my Target Field debut for the season today. Get over there for a little afternoon baseball. Maybe see it with my own eyes if he is indeed in the lineup and running around at full speed again. Quickly in the cooler, too, Memphis gave the Warriors a game, but ultimately Golden State prevails. So Golden State, Houston is the matchup in the 7-2 series. That is going to be a great one. Wolves, Lakers in the 3-6. A lot of things colliding right there. We'll see. Man, the NBA, the Western Conference is just crazy this year. That's just a great conference, great possibilities over there. None of those first-round series are going to be easy for anybody, assuming Memphis knocks off the winner of the 9-10 game. We will see, but those playoffs are going to be fun. Can't wait, even if it's going to be crazy busy around here in the next few weeks. That'll do it for me today. Should have a lot of NBA content tomorrow, some NBA and NHL on Friday. Hoping to have both Chris Hine and Sarah McClellan on. Might split that into 2 episodes, a Wolves preview and a Wild preview, once we see what all is set up here. But lots coming. Listen around for it. Have a great rest of your Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow.